This little guy right here is the Lenovo Legion Go, and I just lied. It's not little at all. It's really big. It plays games good, it does the switch thing with the Joycons, and it has this FPS mode, and it smells like oh, black licorice. Nice. Hello, hi there, I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video today. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you take a handheld gaming PC like the Steam Deck and combined it with a Nintendo Switch? Well, wonder no longer. I present to you the Switch Deck. Would you buy this? No? Yeah, me neither. But maybe you wondered what a competent company would do instead of that worthless piece of garbage that I made. In theory, it sounds like a great idea. Take everything that's good about this Switch with detachable Joy-Cons and the flexibility to use it like a console, but make it more powerful, able to play PC games and give it some other unique features that hardcore PC gamers would appreciate. And it's that line of reasoning that gave birth to the Lenovo Legion Go. It's big, it's powerful, it's weird, and it does stuff. Is it right for you? Well, I don't know. I'm just here to show it to you. The Lenovo Legion Go is the latest handheld gaming PC to hit the streets, the new hotness, and on paper it has a lot going for it. It has a beautiful, giant, high refresh rate screen, a super powerful APU to make those games look good and run good, a big battery, not to mention some very unique control options. We get the Z1 Extreme chip and integrated RDNA 3 graphics. Same chip that's on the Ally, so that's not new. But it's a great chip, so we can't complain much. One thing that is new here is the RAM. The Go has 7500 MHz LPDDR5X on board, which should give it a bit of an edge over the competition, in theory. They sell a 1TB version, but my model has a 512GB NVMe SSD. Luckily, we have micro SD card expansion. Another thing that we get that's new is the battery, which is a 50 watt-hour battery compared to the 40 watt-hour battery on the Ally in the deck. We'll see how that does in a bit. And the screen. This is an 8.8-inch 2560 by 1600 screen with a 144Hz refresh rate. And it has other stuff. You can see it on the screen now. I'm not going to read it all to you. I'm not your mother. And if I was your mother, I'd tell you to clean your room. And subscribe to TechDweeb. Let's talk a bit about the screen because this is probably the most impressive part about the Legion Go. It's almost 9 inches, and on a handheld, it feels like a monster. It's an amazing display. That 2560 by 1600 resolution is a ton of pixels. It's twice the pixel count of a 1080p display like the Ally. You won't be playing most games at that resolution because the hardware in here doesn't have the horsepower to push those resolutions. Definitely not at high frame rates. Speaking of the frame rates, we have a 144Hz screen here. That's a lot of potential frames per second, but we don't get VRR, or variable refresh rate, on this device. But most of the recent handhelds haven't had it, so that's one thing that still sets the Ally apart. In some ways, this amazing screen is kind of wasted on this device because so few situations will be able to benefit from it. Because we don't have the horsepower to push 144Hz in anything demanding. However, a few easy games do run at high refresh rates and high resolution, and it's very nice when they do. We don't have front-facing speakers because the front is all screen, but we do have top-firing speakers, and they're loud enough, and the actual sound quality is good. But I was kinda hoping for more. My old Galaxy S10 Plus has louder, better quality sound than this thing. But it's fine. And speaking of the sound of the fans is not terrible. I mean, they're definitely loud enough that you can hear them when things get cooking, but they're not quiet. But the actual sound isn't as whiny as some of the devices I've played with, including the Steam Deck. The main third-party software experience that you'll be interacting with on the Legion Go, unless you disable it, which I recommend, is Lenovo Space. It tries to act as a front end for your games, but it has problems. It doesn't detect games if you make your own game folders where it's not expecting them. It doesn't detect games on your SD card, which is where most of my games are. In reality, Lenovo Space is more or less a glorified game key selling store. In the main menu, there's an option for Android games, which just tries to install the Amazon App Store, and another button takes you to gamesplanet.com. I mean, it's just advertising. I disabled auto booting of this software, and I only go in here if I need to change an important setting, like the RGB on the thumbsticks. The other piece of software that we have here that I do kind of like is the Quick Settings app. Press this little button up here to bring that up, and in here you can change some stuff about the device, like the brightness and the sound, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, change the resolution, the refresh rate, and the performance stuff like FPS monitoring and the TDP and fan. We have 3 TDP modes: quiet, balance, and performance, with a custom TDP option that can go from 5 watts to 30 watts if you're into fine-tuning your performance. However, like every other Windows-based handheld gaming PC, you'll be dealing with a ton of annoying bullcrap, and every Windows handheld has at least some of these sorts of issues. But it always sticks out to me when I play with these things because my main handheld gaming PC is the Steam Deck, which has so few issues like this. The controls are a big topic. Let's start with the basic stuff. On the front, we have 2 function buttons. One that brings up Lenovo Space, and you can hold this and press the left bumper to get a listing of the hotkeys that you can do with this button. And the other brings up the quick settings. We also have Start and Select down here on the left. We get thumbsticks that are genuinely really good. These are Hall effect sticks, and they are full-size sticks with about the same amount of travel as the sticks on the deck or an Xbox controller. The D-pad though, it's not good. I hate using this to play D-pad specific games because it's just way too flat and very little feedback under your finger. The face buttons are good. I like the look of them, I like their size, and they feel like Xbox buttons to be. The bumpers are huge and slightly clicky, and the triggers are really comfy. They have a nice long travel, and they actuate early and have a consistent sensitivity across the whole range of motion. As you can see, there are many more buttons on the grips of this thing. Each handle has 2 big buttons under your fingers, but they don't do anything when you're in handheld mode. One of my main gripes with the device, probably my biggest gripe actually, is that all of these buttons and knobs and holes seriously take away from the comfort of this thing in your hand. And I expected to get used to it after a while, but I've had this thing for a week and I've been using it a ton, and if anything, I've actually come to find these even more distracting. Lenovo wanted Joycons with this FPS mode, but they made way too many sacrifices to make that happen. Speaking of the Joycons, let's touch on that because it is an interesting thing to be able to do. You can press this little nub down here, and that lets you slide the Joy-Con out, and the device immediately recognizes that they're removed and switches the control scheme. But as Joy-Cons go, yeah, I guess they work. You can put your screen on the table as if it's a tablet and play like this Nintendo Switch style. The actual feel of these Joy-Cons aren't any more comfortable in your hands than they are on the device. If anything, they feel more awkward because now you have this chunky rail under your fingers. But it's not the end of the world. It works in a pinch. But the main claim to fame for the Legion Go is what they call FPS Mode. That's where you shove the right Joy-Con into this disc, and it's held on by magic, and it turns it into a sort of vertical mouse, and all these buttons are bound to keyboard functions, and you can bind them yourself too, obviously. I am a PC gamer. I play PC FPS games, and I was very interested in this functionality. I was excited to see how well it worked, and I didn't like it at first. And even after a week or so of using it every day, it still feels awkward. The right Joy-Con does sort of feel like a mouse, but it's not a comfortable mouse. These plasticky bits feel weird under your palm, and it's awkward to push these thumb buttons and use the wheel. And the biggest problem with actually using this is that there's not enough buttons. Most FPS games need access to all the buttons around WASD on the keyboard, and there's not enough buttons here to be able to do all that stuff. I mean, it sorta works, but it's just not a very good experience. If Lenovo sold these controllers as a standalone PC peripheral, and they actually felt the way these feel in the hands, they would be a laughingstock. The main downside to using it like this is that this screen that feels big when it's on a handheld feels tiny when it's on a desk or table. It feels like you're playing a PC game on a tiny 9-inch monitor. And if you have this hooked up to a big TV or monitor, there's no reason you should be using this janky FPS Joy-Con mode instead of just a regular mouse and keyboard, because that'll actually work well. As for the performance, this is the Z1 Extreme chip, the same as the ROG Ally, and you'd think that you should expect similar performance to the Ally. I don't have an Ally here to compare it to, so I can't give you that data, but I've seen a few reviews that said the Ally performs better, so that's a thing. However, you can run some awesome games on this thing at good settings. The easy stuff will run without issue. I ran most of my 2D indie games in the quiet profile, and they were running well. And for those games that run like this, you'll get some decent battery life, and they look absolutely amazing on this big beautiful screen. But just like on the ROG Ally, if you're gaming at lower TDPs, then the Steam Deck actually takes the win. Up to about 12 watts, the Steam Deck will have better performance. Just look at this chart by the Fox. Are you looking at it? Yeah? Okay, good. This doesn't mean that we can't run lower spec stuff well. It just means that you sometimes might have to increase the TDP to even get some of this stuff to be playable. Hades is a good example. This is a pretty darn easy game to run, but when I was on the quiet profile, the Legion Go couldn't handle it. It was down at around 40 FPS and it was visibly stuttery. When I bumped up to the balanced profile, it got the level of performance that I'd want, getting above 100 FPS, but even here, we weren't able to get up to the 144 Hz that this display supports. I don't want to have to crank the TDP up to the max to play lower spec games, but the Legion Go can't handle many of these simple games at a lower TDP, which is just an issue with the Z1 series, to be honest. But when you up that TDP, you'll be able to play a ton of stuff. Some really freaking nice looking stuff. I found that the balance profile was the sweet spot. Very often I'd be playing on balance and want to see what sort of performance that I was missing out on, so I'd switch to the performance mode and would get maybe 5 to 10 extra FPS, nothing earth-shattering. And considering the extra heat and fan noise and battery drain you get between those modes, you should probably just stick to balance as much as possible. I was using performance mode for most of my testing because I wanted to give it the best chance it could, but I would personally use balance most of the time. I could never really run games at 1600p, but even at 1200p with like 75% resolution scale or performance FSR, the game still looked super sharp. And they played really good. In those situations where I had to go down below 75% scale or use ultra performance FSR to get the frame rate up, it does get noticeably blurry and artifacty, but on this screen it didn't look bad, and it's still a really enjoyable way to play pretty much any game. Older games like Far Cry Primal and Batman Arkham Knight were running well, and I think if you want to play older games, then you'll have a great time here. However, I was expecting a bit more out of a few games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Considering I'm on low settings and 50% resolution scale, I couldn't get this above 60 FPS. And Cyberjunk, as always, proved to be a formidable opponent. Even with performance FSR at the lowest settings, still down at like 30 FPS, so it's a bit of a mixed bag. You can play a lot, but in lots of stuff you'll have to make some pretty substantial sacrifices. And the battery was an issue. I didn't do any extensive tests, but in my days with it, I kept having to reach for that charging cable every hour or two. While I was recording the gameplay for this video, my first session was the low spec indie games and a few higher end games, and the battery lasted 2 hours and 15 minutes there. But my second session, which was just higher end games, only lasted 1 hour and 35 minutes. I also had the brightness turned down because it's easier to film, but if I was personally playing, I'd probably have the brightness higher, which would make these runtimes even shorter. We have a bigger battery on the Legion Go, but I think this big screen eats up a lot of that. It doesn't seem to last any longer than the Ally did, even though their batteries are the same size. So, do I like the Lenovo Legion Go, and do I recommend it? Well, no, I don't like it. There are things I like about it, like the big beautiful screen and the high-end gaming performance, and I like that they were trying something new, but it just didn't come together into something that really appeals to me. I hate the hand feel, the awkward buttons. The Joy-Con mode feels weird, the FPS mode isn't what I wanted, the battery is just as bad as most of these things, and of course Windows is just as annoying as ever. It's a good device and you can have fun with it, but it's just not for me. I'd personally choose the Ally over this, and I didn't even like the Ally that much. I'm excited for when a real competitor comes along and dethrones the deck, because that'll shake up the industry a lot, and that's what we need right now. But the Legion Go isn't that. It's just another option in the crowded space of PC handhelds. It was a good attempt, but it's just too weird for my tastes. Which is saying a lot because I'm weird as a turtle riding a raccoon in a kiddie pool full of root beer. And that brings us to the end. What do you think of the Legion Go? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, then check out this video, my review of the AOK Zoe A1. The other big handheld that I tested, and I actually like that one quite a bit. There's a link on the screen right now and down there in the description below, and you can go watch it now because we're done. I'm TechDweeb, thanks for watching, bye-bye.